I've been through it probably more than once, and I'm sure everybody else is nodding in agreement. We've all felt that sting of betrayal.
Betrayal is a natural emotional response triggered by the unjust behaviors or actions of someone or something else.
Good day, everyone. I'm Siobhan Shaw, and this is your midday momentum from Real Talk. I am excited to talk to you guys today with our guest, Holli Kenley, and we're going to be talking about betrayal. Is it a loss or actually a win? And how we turn that pain into power. And last time I actually interviewed you was probably a decade or so ago on the attitude shift. And it's so great to see your face. And I'm excited to spend the next 30 minutes just talking about the win or loss from betrayal.
Siobhan, it's so good to see you again. I was so excited when you reached out to me, and I was trying to think of when was it that we last talked, and it's been a while. So thank you for reaching out. And I love the title of the talk today because it was sort of a good shift for me because I don't often look at it in those terms as a win, a loss versus a win, and it certainly can be. So I'm excited to look at it through that lens today.
I want to ask the audience, and they can nod their heads that because they're a Zoom audience and anybody that's watching on YouTube after the fact, have you ever felt the stab of betrayal? It really feels like a stab in the back and it cuts deep. I don't think there's anybody who hasn't felt that. You've been betrayed or you think you've been betrayed, right? So it does feel like a loss. I mean, I've been through it probably more than once, and I'm sure everybody else is nodding in agreement. We've all felt that sting of betrayal from somebody close to us. It's usually somebody close in the family, a friend group, your community, those types of people. And so, Holli, I want you to share with everybody a little bit about your background first, and then let's get into this and really unpack betrayal and see if it is a win or a loss.
Okay, I would love to do that. Um, I am a California licensed marriage and family therapist, and I have been for getting close to 30 years. And also, I've kept a private practice in the field of psychology. I've written 11 books, four of them on betrayal, and I've done a tremendous amount of speaking and presenting and workshops and all of that kind of thing. So I am highly invested into this topic, and I did do a TED Talk on betrayal, the loss no one is talking about, and that was in 2022. So I do consider myself a thought leader in this area of psychology around betrayal. And I always like to put out there, Shaban, that psychology is a soft science. There aren't absolutes. At the same time, when you spend a lot of time like I do in this area, I believe that I have some pretty substantial and well grounded and founded principles by which we can learn from, heal, and move forward.
Great. So betrayal, is it the worst thing that can happen to us, or is it a door to something better? Let's go. Defining betrayal, that's probably where we should start.
Okay. And this is more, it's relatively newer thinking what I'm going to share. By that, I mean about the past 5 years or so, although I do reference this in a couple of my books. But betrayal is a natural emotional response triggered by the unjust behaviors or actions of someone or something else. The way that the betrayal wound shows up in us is what I call the loss of self, the loss of self. These are the important interpersonal pieces of ourselves that make us who we are, that define us. Okay, let me give an example, if I could. So let's say that someone is really invested into their job, into their career. They put a lot of time, energy, resources into getting that career, that job, and they're unjustly and unfairly let go. The losses can present like the loss of role. Who am I? I'm not in that role anymore. Who am I? The loss of identity, the loss of reputation, the loss of worth, the loss of being a provider and the security that comes with that. So what I'm saying is that yes, it can be a loss of trust. Yes, it can be a loss of other, but they all tend to go back to those deeply interpersonal, important pieces that make us who we are.
So that's why the sting is so great, right? Because it's affecting our inner person, our inner being.
Absolutely. The pieces of us again who have defined us who we are. So it's devastating, it's paralyzing, it's soul crushing. And I think because of what we've heard about betrayal and what it is and what it isn't, that we tend to think that it's something, not that it's not important, but a big one is trust. You know, that betrayal, and it is a loss of trust. I have that as one of the definitions in my book, just a more in a sort of a logical way of going about it, that it is a loss of trust. It's a loss of belief. It's a loss of investment. But why it's so painful is because it's the loss of self.
Okay, so let's look at it from a friendship point of view. So you've got a friend who's betrayed you. How how do we deal with that? Because, friends, the older you get, the more you understand that friends come and go. There's only a handful of people that probably maintain a friendship from childhood or early adulthood. Like one of our audience members I've known for a very long time, I won't say, but we went to university together and we've stayed connected ever since. We're like sisters. She's never betrayed me, but if she betrayed me, and you won't, Cynthia, I would be devastated, and vice versa if I betrayed her. And what would we see as betrayal is something that we think is unjust or that is truly unjust.
That's such an important question, Siobhan, and I work in the areas of abuse and trauma and complex trauma in particular. But it doesn't really matter the degree or the severity or the source of the betrayal, because w- w- here's what I say to my clients. This is so important, is that if you perceive it to be a betrayal, if it's your truth that it was a betrayal, then that's what's important. Because let's say, for example, like I'm working with clients that have, endured horrific physical, sexual, psychological abuse, all those kinds of things. And they're being told that they shouldn't feel betrayed. Well, but they do feel betrayed. Of course they do. And if that's their truth, that in itself is part of their healing journey, because they're getting their voice back. They're resecuring their truth back. They're getting their belief back. And so one of the primary pieces in and misconceptions in healing with betrayal is that we have to turn inward. we have to get our focus on ourselves. And this is hard work to get, to get clients to do this because they're drawn outward. Betrayal pulls us outward. And in that outward, we want someone else or something else to fix it or to make it right. But we have to settle down, we have to turn inward, and we have to trust what we are feeling. We have to first trust, believe, and invest into ourselves first before we ever start to then reach out and start to redefine our friendships or heal them if we make the decision to do that.
Is that part of, so somebody betrays you, whether it's a friend or a coworker, your boss, as you just, you've just lost your job that you thought you were going to be installed in for years and years and years, and that is an ultimate loss. I mean, a family betrayal is probably, for me, would be the ultimate betrayal, right? Because family is everything. You back your family up. You can fight with your family, but really, when it comes down to it, your blood, and it is. It's, your family against the world. That's how I was brought up. So no matter whether you're tight, like brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers, and your uncles and aunts, and that whole family unit, they're really tight. They live in the same area, they're always together, or they live on different ends of the country and around the world, and they don't see each other very often or even talk each other to each other often. But when it comes right down to it, you expect your family to be your biggest cheerleader and to step in when you fall and you need help getting up, right? So if they betray that, and they betray that trust, it is an ultimate loss. So from your experience, what's the shift that turns a betrayal into an opportunity for growth? Because what you talk, are we going to forgive the betrayer? Is the betrayer going to forgive us for seeing them as the betrayer, the person who stabbed us in the back?
Okay, I'm going to speak about forgiveness in a kind of a separate piece.
Okay.
I have a lot of thinking around that. I'm going to go back to your example is that okay, first of all, the shift. With betrayal, we have to back up a little bit. And this, again, is based on my years of research and experience as a therapist in my own recovery and all of that. In order to create the conditions for a shift, there's a first piece that we have to embrace. And that's how I've set up my book on breaking through betrayal and all of that. So I'm just going to talk briefly about it. Is that as I get clients come in and I'm getting them to turn their focus inward and to stop spinning and, going a mile a minute, and get them to kind of settle and to turn their focus inward, it is paramount that we work through what I call the 3 states of being. And this is what we navigate through when we're betrayed. The first state of being is a state of confusion, where we're asking why. How could this happen? Why did this happen to me? I can't make sense out of something that doesn't make any sense. And it's much more to that, but it's the state of confusion. The second one is the state of worthlessness, where we have been robbed of who we are, redefined from everything that we know, and relinquished to a lesser place than we were before. In other words, our whole identity is put into question, and our whole sense of value and worth is put into question. And then the state of powerlessness, confusion, worthless, and powerlessness, where our life has been changed and controlled by someone else's actions or behaviors, and we're not in a position yet, and I say yet, to control or change that, because I do believe in empowerment. But right now in these states that we're in, we have to heal those first and work through those first. And if we do that, and while we're doing that, we will create the conditions for a shift to take place where we begin to see and feel and sense what is possible for us. And that possibility is around redefining who we are. And in some cases, with some of my clients, defining themselves from the first place because they've always been defined by other people, places, and things. And
Right.
This is really important. And I believe family is important. I do. And I hear this all the time. And what I move towards helping to get clients to see is family is important. And so am I. And
Yeah.
so am I. And so our work again is to heal ourselves first. Then we have a healed foundation from which to re-navigate those relationships, those friendships, if indeed we choose to do so. We're going to be at a different place when we've gone through those healing steps, phases, stages, states than we are now. So we don't make those big critical decisions when we're going through the states of being. We make them once that shift is starting to come in and settle, and we have a healing foundation.
You're saying don't react. Go inward first.
Yeah.
Don't do that lashing out to get back at them or tell everybody about it. Try to get your side of the story out. Just back off, walk away, and heal before you start to make any choices as to how you're going to deal with this betrayal. Whether you're going to just heal from it and carry on and go on with your life and never see that person again, or if you decide to try to heal the relationship and carry on because it's important to you. I come from a big family and I was the youngest. So I was the dramatic one. I'd throw the temper tantrums to get the attention. So they'd run up to my room because I was, and then they'd come and everybody would be like, "Oh, what's wrong, Siobhan?" And I'd be like, right. I mean, I'm just writing about it in something I'm doing an interview, a written interview, and I'm laughing because I don't do that anymore. I don't throw those temper tantrums because I have healed from the from being the youngest. I've stepped into my power and who I am as a person. It's taken me a long time and a lot of personal growth and a lot of expert teaching, as we would have said on the attitude shift, just working it out. And but I've been betrayed, and I've felt betrayed by my family, right? And I'm sure lots of people out there will say that there's been a point in your life where there's some level of betrayal, that you feel that it's a betrayal, whether it is unjust or not, right? So what I'm saying is it's it was for me, it was an opportunity to take step back, first of all, take take a look at the situation and why it happened, right? And I've talked about this before. I then, after several years of just being quiet, I picked up the phone and I called the person and I said, "I love you." And we repaired that relationship. And I saw it from her point of view. And I mean, we're we're great sisters again, right? Do you know what I mean? It was with one of my sisters. I have several, so people have to figure out which one. But it was something that I thought was a betrayal. And I was really mad and I was really upset. And I was like, how could you? And she did it out of fear, right? But she lost and I lost because we were in that fight, fight space, right? It was like, we weren't at fisticuffs because we weren't anywhere, we weren't even in the same room or even in the same region. But the thing is we we both had some level of anger tied up in that. And I saw it as a betrayal. She saw it as her right, right? And it was just, I needed that time to step back. And I think it's so important. Um, and if she heard that today, she'd be nodding her head saying, yeah. And and our relationship today is stronger than it was. And it's more adult because here I was, the baby of the family, you know, thinking that this older sister, took advantage of me. And who knows what else was going on then. But I fell back into that position in the family. My sense of self, my worth, all those things that were precarious when I was a child, they all came flying back. It all came just rolling back in, and it really affected me for quite a long time. So when we've been betrayed, and it's easy to spiral into that self-doubt and the anger and those trust issues, right? um, how do we take that first step to going within? Like what's the first thing we have to do?
I'll answer that, Siobhan. I want to just add something to the piece that we were talking about because it's important, is in getting clients or individuals to settle down and turn their focus inward and work on themselves. It's just important to put out there that, and have so many clients that are in this situation where there are legal things that have to be tended to. There might be charges brought or court dates and appearances, or they can, they're being served with divorce papers, or so it's it's yes, it's we need to turn inward and do that healing. But sometimes, there's so many different circumstances and situations where it's called, well, we don't have a choice, or we have to step out and take care of these things. But going back to what you said with your sister, even in short periods of time where I've worked with clients that they have to show up in court, or whatever, that just it, and just keeping in mind that we're being, true to ourselves, that we're trusting in ourselves, we're trusting in our voice, we're respecting ourselves. How are we going to show up in court? How are we going to show up at that family reunion? Whatever. I mean, sometimes it's things that they just feel like they have to be at. And how can I do that without betraying myself? And so there are strategies and there's tools to work through those situations where we do have to put ourselves out there, even though we're not in a completely healed or a better healing place than we were. So I just thought that was important to put that out there. Um, so getting back to where we first start is that in my work with my clients is that I have them spend time on really identifying, well, first of all, going through the three states of being, and working through that. That's paramount to really get people to settle down and do that. And then we start recognizing and identifying the lost pieces of themselves. And that might have already occurred as we're working through those three states of being, but that informs me and it informs them where we need to do the work. Um, a lot of times it's around boundary work. A lot of times it's around how much we invest into our relation, the people who have betrayed us. And I also refer to our betrayal environment. I mean, let me give you an example from a client, and I'm going to give very general because I don't want to ever breach confidentiality. And I finished up with this client, over a year ago. And as I said, I work in the areas of abuse and trauma. So I've had so many phenomenal clients who have turned their pain into purpose and their wound into opportunity. But this one was just kind of sticking to my mind because it was a little unusual. And so it was a female in her early 60s, and she was highly successful, an entrepreneur, had several businesses. She was married to a wonderful man, had an adult child, and she'd done a lot of work before she came in to see me because her family of origin, there was it was a matriarchal culture, and there were generations of maternal abuse. I mean, horrific, just horrific. And not only was it tolerated in her culture, it was actually encouraged. And so she had been a victim of abuse for really her entire life. But she had done a lot of work until she came to see me. And I thought it was really, I felt very honored that she would reach out to a female, because there was just no trust among females. But the primary reason she came to see me was because of anger. She was so angry with herself. And so as we worked together, what we identified is that she was over investing still to this point into her family because she was so successful, and all she wanted them to do was see her worth and her value. And so she would give back monetarily. She would buy them things, help them with things financially, bail them out, do that. I mean, this had been going on for years. And again, I mentioned this earlier, what she was really doing was betraying herself. She was angry with herself because every time she would do this, she would get re-betrayed. And so by identifying that and doing the hard work of looking at loose boundaries and shoring those up. There was a codependency piece in this as well. And really then working on what is family and what is that supposed to look like? And what would you like that to look like? And what does that mean to you? She had to really redefine family for herself and then make choices around how she was going to invest of herself, if at all, into her family of origin. And her huge shift was in no, I'm going to focus in on myself, on my spouse, and on my adult child. Sounds simple. It was not. It was a year and a half of hard, hard work. But she was, I just call her my miracle, because of the background of the abuse. But she just began to blossom and bloom and start investing into whole different areas of her life
I've,
that
s-
were giving back to her.
I've seen that. I've seen that where people have made a choice to just move on and they blossom. It's like a phoenix rising.
Yes.
If you know somebody who's going through something where there's a huge betrayal and they choose to just walk away and leave an entire family like this lady did. I mean, she obviously, that was a difficult decision because you're leaving everybody in your bloodline, right? Like cousins and uncles and aunts, and just you walk away and start focus on your own family, like she was, just her husband and her son, and what she wanted to accomplish in life. And I think then you pour yourself into your purpose
Mhm.
and your people. And I've done that, and I've I've done that, and I've also done the forgiveness piece, right? Because really, when it comes right down to it, did I want to never talk to my sister again in my lifetime? Can you imagine what that would feel like if you're a normal person? Do you know what I mean? If you've got some sort of demonic attachment, that's a different ball game. But if you're just, one of the people in the world just trying to live a good life and get by, and you never get to talk to a member of your family again, that's a hard decision to make. It's the same with friendships, right? As well, you could have long-term friendship if for some reason my friend who's watching right now, she and I got into this whole thing about betrayal, it would be hard to never pick up the phone and talk to her again, even
Yes.
through my anger or her anger, right, of feeling betrayed.
Yes. And I agree with you, Siobhan. And again, it's hard because I deal with so much abuse and trauma. I just want to put out there again that it's really an individual and a case by case thing, because a family member can be, like in this client's case that I was talking about, can be so toxic, can be so, I mean, there was mental illness obviously involved with some of the, so if and it's your choice. If you want to choose to, that's why I mentioned family reunions. I've had clients who came from just horrifically, a lot of sexual abuse and all this kind of thing. And so making that decision to go to a family reunion and put yourself in the presence of the betrayer that the rest of the family has aligned themselves with, and you're the outcast because you brought this up, you took it to court, you broke up the family. And so it's it's all about where you are as an individual, what you're ready to do, how your healing is informing you, and that it isn't because you should do it, it's because you want to, for whatever your reasons are. And if clients decide that, I support them and we prepare them for how to do that and navigate it safely.
And on that note, Holly, thank you so much. We have to end it here. This has really been a powerful conversation. I hope that our audience gets something from it, because betrayal might knock us down, but it shouldn't keep us down. And it should actually set us up for something better, a stronger relationship with the person you felt betrayed by, or a stronger relationship with yourself as you move on from that betrayal and never see that person again in your lifetime. So before we wrap it up, how can people keep this conversation going with you?
I had on my website is has some information there. It's hollikenley.com. And I have my books that I've written, resources, and I do different podcasts, and I have a way to contact me if you have a question. I'm going to be putting up some classes online. I thought I'd have it ready by now, but it's probably going to be closer to summer. And but I have a lot of resources on my website that they can go there and check it out.
Awesome, that's great. And a final comment or two on betrayal. And is it a win or is it a loss?
Okay, I would like to share this, and it's just going to take a couple of minutes. Is
Sure.
that one of the books that I wrote, it was a qualitative study that I did on daughters betrayed by their mothers, moving from brokenness to wholeness. And on the cover is a pearl, and it's a beautiful white pearl sitting in an oyster shell. And so when I get ready to write a book, I always look for a photo, and I stumbled across that photo, and that photo of that pearl and that oyster became the whole theme for the entire book. And so I would like to share this to the listening audience. Is let's remind ourselves for just a second that a pearl, its genesis starts with a grain of sand going into the oyster. And for the oyster to be able to live with that grain of sand in it, it secretes nacre made from the inner lining of the shell. And over years, it produces this pearl, which protects it from being irritated and hurt. And it also heals and forms this pearl. Betrayal is like that. It's like an injurious piece of sand that lodges itself in our core. And there aren't any absolutes in psychology, but there are good tendencies and guiding principles. If you do that work, do your own work of healing yourself, and you can get some help, but that you too can take that injurious betrayal grain of sand and turn that into a pearl. And a real pearl, when held up to the light, is translucent in depth. And so if you can imagine that that betrayal's piece of grain of sand becoming a pearl, and that authentic translucent depth will shine in you and through you.
I love it. What a way to end the show. Thank you so much. Everybody, remember that betrayal or anything that is affecting you in a traumatic way could be your pearl. I love that. So keep it real,